war for independence was a sacrifice for all in many ways, but there was nowhere quite like New Jersey in regards to danger and duty. I'm here at my family's home in Linden, about a third of a mile from the hamlet of Wheatsheaf. The south end of the original purchase of Jan and Susanna Winans is about the same distance due east of here. Of course, for a long time we have had a train splitting the Wheatsheaf neighborhood into new neighborhoods. In colonial times, this whole larger area of today's Linden and Roselle from 9th Avenue until Edgar Road was called the Wheatsheaf neighborhood, a rural grouping of farms and plantations. At the time of the Revolution, their family had been cultivating this land and community for over 100 years. This land was worth fighting for, and the Winans did, and then some. Not in the lines of the Continental Army, although the family had fought several large-scale skirmishes and battles during the Jersey Campaign, but as the famous Minutemen. The Winans family chose as a whole to do their duty in defense of this area we call Union County today. After the Forge War campaign, in which the Winans family played an all-in role, the Arthur Kill and therefore Linden became the front line in the north for the remainder of the war. If the British would have kept a foothold on the Elizabeth tract, the 11 staunch Patriots battling for the land that would become Linden would lose more than their lives. Their families would have lost everything. Descended from a man that once ruled England, this was a battle they had to fight. Much is made of the Minutemen of Massachusetts, who were ready at a moment's notice in the first year of the war. The Winans and the Minutemen of New Jersey did this for 6 years. This was a brutal kind of war, with still-of-the-night attacks, abductions, murders, and rapes. A civil war between Tories and Patriots, with Tories guiding the greatest army in the world, knowing their home and the habits of the people who they formerly called friend. The Winans family stood ready, conducting guerrilla war with the Essex militia, and whose actions leveled the field of the newly trained professional Continental Army under Washington to continue the momentum of the Christmas of 1776.
Isaac Winans II was born in Elizabethtown in 1710. He was the son of Isaac Winans I, who lived from 1684 to 1723, and he was the grandson of John Winans, or Jan Winans, who was one of the original associates of Elizabethtown in 1665. Isaac married Margaret in 1733, but she died in 1741. Then married Magdalene, who was born in 1717 and died in 1775. Chosen at the age 65, he was a member of the New Jersey Committee of Safety during the Revolutionary War. This post was given to him on December 6, 1774, at the age of 65. During the war, and via the brutality of the conflict on the front line of what is now Linden, him and his son were abducted in the middle of the night by Loyalist forces and forced upon their own sleigh to traverse the frozen Arthur Kill and Hudson River during the Little Ice Age, then imprisoned in the old sugar house in Lower Manhattan. The several hours, possibly 2-day trip took a toll on Isaac, and he died 3 days later in the sugar house prison.
Benjamin Winans Sr. was the son of Jacob Winans and Mary Morse, and was the grandchild of founders Jan and Susanna Winans. Born in Elizabethtown inside the limits of what is now the city of Linden in 1722, Benjamin married Jane Wood, also from the Wheatsheaf neighborhood, and granddaughter of original associate Jonas Wood. They had 9 children before her death in 1776. We will highlight 2 of their sons and 1 daughter in reference to the Revolutionary War. He then married Abigail Clark, who passed in 1803. Benjamin Sr. died in 1796. Benjamin Winans served New Jersey and the Crown during the French and Indian War. This experience would suit the Jersey militia well later against the British Empire. In 1777, at age 55, he was commissioned a captain in the 1st Regiment, Essex County, under Colonel Elias Dayton, not to be confused with his son Benjamin Jr., who also raised to the rank of captain in the 1st Regiment, Essex County Militia. The Winans were all Minutemen, our volunteer troops choosing to stay here and fight the war at a constant to protect the Linden area. Later in the war, Benjamin Sr. enlisted into a special unit of state troops under Colonel Moses Jacques, which was a militia unit in longer terms of service, usually about 1 year. His military experience in the French and Indian War fighting a guerrilla conflict was invaluable to the militia troops, who weren't disciplined enough to engage in open field battle maneuvers as they were rotated in and out of service by General Washington. Late in the conflict, he served along frontiers or borders of the state where action by the enemy was frequent, such as Elizabethtown and Amboy. Militia were not regulars, however, on the front line at Rahway Meadows, now Linden, or at Elizabeth Point, there was a constant skirmish and missions of disruption. So the Winans men were in fierce warfare nearly the entire conflict. It was a savage civil war along the Kill, resulting in his cousin's abduction in 1780. All evidence points to Benjamin's committing to the New Jersey Regulars service under Jacques as a desire for retribution against the Tory neighbors who led the abduction. It is not clear if it was Cornelius Hatfield and his kin, but they were responsible for setting up many of the lightning raids into Elizabeth Point, Tremley, and Wheatsheaf, as they were former neighbors and knew the habits of the area. Benjamin Winans and Jane Wood Winans' oldest son was Benjamin Jr., born in 1747 in Elizabethtown, and he died in 1819. He's buried in the First Presbyterian graveyard on Broad Street in Elizabeth. His younger brother John and him married the Clausen sisters. Benjamin married Jane Clausen. Oddly, for the time, I found no record of any children. Jane Clausen Winans passed in 1812, and Benjamin remarried his nephew Job Winans' widow, Sarah Winans. Benjamin rose to the rank of captain in the 1st Regiment of the Essex County Militia, this after his father committed to the New Jersey force spoken of before. Like the rest of the Winans, protecting the Elizabethtown tract from British and the brutal Civil War from their former neighbors stationed on Staten Island was paramount. Benjamin Jr. saw much action during the Forage War, as well as the entire conflict. Even when the main armies weren't in the area of Elizabethtown, Linden and Roselle, etc., there was still constant danger of raids, and he had to keep himself and his men at the ready for many skirmishes, some undocumented, in what is now Linden, Rahway, and Elizabeth. John Winans, son of Benjamin Sr. and younger brother to Benjamin Jr., was born in 1750 in Elizabethtown, and he died in what is now Linden in 1802. He married Hannah Clausen, born in 1754, and died in 1830 at the age of 77. They farmed in pre-Linden and also had some marshlands from inheritance. The couple had 6 children. Hannah never remarried. John served the war effort as a Minuteman in the 2nd Regiment Essex County Militia under Captain Squire, along with his kin Abraham Winans, Kelsey Winans, Lewis Winans, and Matthias Winans. Matthias Winans, brother to Moses, fought with Captain Squire's 2nd Essex County Regiment. He was a private and also served as a Minuteman, and like his uncle, volunteered in the New Jersey State Troops, or state regulars outside of the Continental Army, with a longer commitment, surely seeking justice for his brother Isaac Jr.'s captivity and his father's death at the Sugar House prison. Matthias was married to Rachel, last name unknown, and they had 2 daughters, Mary and Abigail, and 1 son, Isaac Ross. Moses Winans, born in 1753 in today's Linden. He was the son of Isaac Winans and grandson to Jan and Susanna. He married his cousin Ruth, who was born in 1758, also in Elizabethtown. As odd as this is to us, knowing more about genetics than they did, this did occur from time to time, especially in the colonies. He died in 1822 and Ruth Pryor in 1817. They are buried in the First Presbyterian graveyard in Elizabeth. Moses served as a private in Captain Christopher Marsh's company of Light Horse. Like the rest of his family, he was involved in several skirmishes, and his company would track retreating British troops in engagements like Short Hill, Springfield, and Spanktown. His company would also make runs to bring the Minutemen to arms at a moment's notice. Lewis, Kelsey, and Samuel represented the Winans family in Essex County Militia as well. Jan and Suzanne's line saw extensive action during the Forage War, and their units were praised for the harassment of the enemy during that period. The Elizabethtown tract, especially the Rahway Meadows, Tremley Point, Spanktown, Woodbridge, and much of Wheatsheaf neighborhood, was named the Hornet's Nest by the Hessians. The militia would subject British forces to a constant multitude of hit-and-run lightning attacks. Then just as they appeared, they were gone, disappearing quickly back into the favorable terrain. Most, if not all, the Winans clan were involved in the Second Battle of Spanktown and the Battle of Short Hills in 1777. The Winans again mustered with the regulars for large engagements in 1780, fighting at Springfield, Connecticut farms, and all being part of the militia of 500 men squaring off with the Hessian advanced troops during the raid of Elizabethtown. Being forced to fall back faced with an overwhelming force, they didn't flee, they orderly retreated from Elizabeth, gaining precious time for the Continentals. It is known after both armies withdrew from Springfield, these men followed British forces all the way back to Elizabethtown Point, reaffirming the label of the Hornet's Nest and severely demoralizing the British. General Clinton had been effectively discouraged from ordering an invasion of New Jersey again. This allowed Washington to slip the Northern Continental Army out in 1781 to surround Yorktown, where the combined American and French armies forced the surrender of Cornwallis and the capture of the entire British Southern Army. King George's only force in the new United States was left isolated in New York. The war would officially end in 1783, and the last British boot embarked for England from Sandy Hook, New Jersey.
Honest old friend, a merry old song, classic old